Ladies and gentlemen, today is September 25th, 2014. And this is the KNKL Show, episode 197, where we learn to be better artists. I'm your host, Keenan Lafferty, and today we are going to be doing a tutorial on creating bright scenes and how you can render the same effects yourself at home with your good old Photoshop. And to be demonstrating this, we are going to be working on, and I'm going to be showing you a time lapse for this beautiful picture that I just created for the upcoming World of Warcraft pool party. Yes, for those of you who don't know what the heck I do, like every couple months or so, I have a big nerd party in the World of Warcraft. You basically log on and make a free account and join us, and we go to the pool and we listen to music. And you guys tune in live at the on my Twitch channel. But that is another conversation for the end of the episode. What we're going to be doing today is looking at this. But before we get into that, we have some things we have to take a look at. And I have our handy dandy Zoom. Where is the Zoom? Zoom! All right, because we got some awesome submissions coming into the lovely lane. So as usual, I just wanted to say thank you guys so much for joining us on the Facebook, for liking the show on Facebook, and submitting your awesome art. For those of you who are still on the fence about whether or not you want to join us and show your artwork to the world, come out of your shell, just consider clicking that link down in the description or typing in the Facebook link at the bottom left of the video. Come on over. We got cookies and lots of cool art for you to take a look at. So yeah, don't be shy. Don't be bashful. Eventually it's going to get to the point where I literally have to scroll for like forever to get through all of these. But I'm super happy. I'm super happy that you guys submitted these. Really, really awesome styles. And it makes my day every time, so thank you. All right, so with all that out of the way, let's go ahead and get into the good old time lapse. And we got a big time lapse ahead of us, so let's go ahead and get started right now. And mostly I'm going to be talking about a bunch of things today. We're going to be talking about composition. We're going to be talking about exposure. We're going to be talking about all kinds of cool things. So the first thing that I want you guys to notice right away is that we're working with our good old thumbnails. And look at this amazing work right here. This is where all the magic happens. Right in the very beginning, where I'm just kind of diddling around, just doing some doodles about how I want to start this picture. And then you'll notice I very quickly start painting outside of it, adding stuff to it, not worrying too much about whether I'm going to use it or not, just kind of using the force of the artist. Remember, I talked about this. When you are relaxed and you're having fun, you are letting the force of the artist naturally show itself. And your artwork is just going to be 10 times better than if you're stressed out and going crazy and worrying about deadlines and worrying about if you're going to get fired or not. But that's another conversation for another time. But what I'm getting at is that it's very, very important that you just relax as you're working. And another thing that I have basically beaten into your guys' heads is that you need to take breaks. Please take breaks. Do your mind a favor, do your brain a favor, and take breaks. And I will basically tell you guys straight up, the way that I like to work is I work for about 27 minutes, and then I rest for the rest of the hour. So it's usually about 34 minutes. So I'm actually resting more than I'm working. And that's basically my new schedule. That's how I like to work. And the reason why I feel that this works is because you'll notice right before, a little ways back here, see how I was playing around with this composition? I wasn't completely feeling it, and I was getting to the point where I was starting to get a little stressed out, right? This is the part where you start running into problems, and I really feel that when you're working on a piece, you'll run into problems about every half an hour. Isn't that interesting? So taking the rest of the hour off to just get up and walk away, take a break, oftentimes you'll get those ideas. You'll pull your focus back in on exactly what you're trying to accomplish. And so when I came back, I realized, okay, I see what I'm doing wrong here. I'm going to be having all of these characters, like you saw in that last composition, all those characters are on the left side of the picture, and they're just going to be covered up by this text anyway. So I need to consider having less detail behind the letters and putting a few more details here and having the main focal point be our good orc friend right there up in the front, sipping his drink, whatever it is, California Shirley Temple. That's what he has. One of my favorite drinks. So now I'm starting to go into the ever infamous line sculpting stage. And this is something that I personally like to do. This is where I feel that my technique and my style starts to branch off a little bit from other artists out there in the digital world. Because a lot of people would actually take this sketch and then start drawing on top of it. But what I personally like to do is I take the original sketches, like the really rough stuff, and I'll actually go through and I'll begin sort of adding and subtracting brush, like values, brush strokes, and eraser marks. So basically I'm just drawing for a little bit and then I flip it around. I flip my stylus around and then I erase it away. And this is why I call it line sculpting, because I almost think of it as a block of clay, right? Back here, you can barely tell what this is, but this is going to turn into our sexy night elf girl that's sitting on the edge of the pool. And I really feel that why this works for me is because there's so much like raw emotion and sometimes like little subtle flowy things that are happening within the way that the weight of the body is displaced, or the way that the character is sitting, or maybe it's something in like a little bit of the emotion that's being captured in the face, that sometimes I feel that if I redraw it over again, if I draw another layer on top of it, sometimes you lose something. You lose some of the original sculpture that was in there, the original rough rawness that was in there. So that's why I like working like this. The line sculpting, adding and subtracting. So that's basically what you're going to be seeing me doing. You're going to be seeing me do that over the next little bit here. The time lapse is actually going to go for about 15 minutes. So that makes us happy. I slowed it down just for you guys. Slowed it down just so you could see every little thing that I do. And then you can slow it down even more on your thing if you want to download the YouTube video. I know you know how to do that. You can download the YouTube video and like slow it down even more. And then I can talk like this. Yes. So, moving on. So one of the things that I'm keeping in mind as I go forward with this is that I want this scene to be very, very bright. Okay? And the way that you do this is going to be using a trick called exposure. And basically the way that I've learned to create bright scenes is all you have to worry about is heightening the contrast between the light and the shadow, right? So your lights are going to be super, super bright, super glowy. And then when it transitions over to the shadows, it is going to become very, very dark. So it's almost like you push both ends of the spectrum further away from each other. And when you do that, our eyes read that as a very bright scene. But we'll get more into that as we actually get into the color. And as I kind of browse through the painting at the end of this. We'll do some comparisons and I'll show you exactly what colors I chose. And I'll kind of talk you through why I did that. So, but in the meantime, what we're working with right now is mostly composition. So I want you guys to notice, like here I go, watch. See how I just erase and kind of start sculpting in the character, sculpting in. Basically, I'm not worrying too much about like line work here because I know that as I go back in space at this point, there's going to be less detail happening with the Blood Elf girl. And then even less detail happening with the actual characters in the pool. And like eventually this ends up being my undead warrior girl, Tankana. She's like holding a beach ball. And she's like on top of this Tauren guy's shoulders. And it ended up looking like I don't know, like the whole scene itself ended up being way cooler than I thought it would be. Just because I feel like I was able to pull it off. I was able to pull off exactly what I was looking for. So I was really happy with that. But yeah, I'm considering compositions here. One of the main things that you want to consider when you're drawing your pictures is who do you want to be dominant? Who is the dominant character in your scene? And in a couple of the earlier compositions I made, this is my shaman Cuzley. Cuzley was actually lower than a lot of the characters behind him. So this gave like a weird sort of feeling of the characters behind, like the secondary supporting characters, being dominant over the shaman Cuzley in the front. And I wanted him to be sort of like the main guy. I wanted him to be the focal point. I wanted him to be the dominant one in the scene. And you'll notice how there's this cascading line that goes right from the top of Cuzley's head all the way down to the other characters in the scene. And this creates a cool composition of it just brings you, or rather this way, brings you into the piece, right? It's this cool wedge shape and it's a nice flow to it. As opposed to like zigzagging all over the place and doing all this crazy stuff. It's just a nice kind of relaxing, smooth curve that is akin to resting alongside the pool on a nice sunny day sipping a drink, right? Nothing crazy about this composition here. It's just very flat, very relaxed, and super easy to look at. So I'm just adding in some of the text here. Again, trying to make sure, because I'm building this to be an invitation, I want to make sure that none of the words or anything is covering up anything important. So once I get that laid in, now I start kind of laying in the background. Start basically figuring out what the values are going to be for like the sky and all this stuff. And I actually started I started running into some problems here. And I was working on this last night right before I went to bed. And to be honest, I always hit a point in my paintings where I honestly feel like I don't know what the heck I'm doing. I really feel like, oh man, it's not gonna work. Oh, what am I gonna do? I just wasted all this time and I just time lapse this whole thing, and this is supposed to be for a tutorial and people are gonna think I suck. And there's always a point in my paintings where I think that. And what I realized is that oftentimes when you get that feeling, it's either A, because it's late at night, you've been working for 10 hours straight all day, and you just get some rest or take a nap, or you haven't been taking enough breaks, right? Again, the breaks comes into play. And before we jump into the color, I want to elaborate on this, give myself a little more light. Yeah. But yeah, I know that I always get to this point. So it's basically, it happens so much, getting into this feeling of like, oh man, I don't know what the heck I'm doing. Oh, this thing is going to suck. This painting is going to suck. Like, this happens so much to me that I know it's just a habit. It's just part of the process for me. And I feel like a lot of artists and a lot of people get sucked into this and then they get scared away by it. They're like, oh man, I don't know what I'm doing. Oh, I might as well just stop it, right? I'll just leave it and I'll start something new, right? Oh man, I totally messed that painting up. Oh, okay, I'm not going to even finish that. I'm just going to try again. And then you get to that point where you don't know what you're doing in that painting, then you leave that one behind and then you go do another one. And this is a very, very common thing that a lot of people come up to me and say. They're like, Keenan, I can never finish anything. I can never finish my paintings. And what I would recommend to you is that when you get to that point where you feel like you don't know what you're doing, take a break, finish it up for the day, come back to it tomorrow, because then you will get the ideas. And even if you don't get the ideas, I strongly recommend that you finish what you start. Always finish the paintings that you start, because if you leave them behind, it's like a child, right? You can't just leave your children behind. You got to nourish them. You got to make sure they grow up to be, you got to do the best you can to like mold them into decent human beings. And even if they don't turn out to be decent human beings, at least you did your best, right? But don't leave your children. Don't leave your children. Your paintings are your children. Okay, so finish them off. Finish them off, give them a good life, and yeah, that's a great analogy. So, and it'll make you more confident in your stuff. Because the other thing that I've realized is that when you finish stuff, even if it doesn't turn out the way that you wanted it to, oftentimes you'll see, oh, hey, now I know exactly what I need to study. Now I know exactly what I need to improve upon as I go into the next thing. Okay? So, anyway. With that point being said, let's move on to what we're doing right now. We're laying in colors, okay? And this is after I had a good night's sleep, right? I woke up, I was ready to go. I sat down and I started, I had all of my points, like what I wanted to accomplish with this painting, laid out in my head, and I just got to work. Okay, so the first thing I want you guys to notice is the color that I decided to lay in on top of this skin. I want you to notice how much of a contrast it is from the darkness. I always like to start with dark base colors and then paint the light on top of it. This allows you to, I really feel like it's a much more natural progression to paint light as opposed to paint shadow. I used to paint shadow all the time, but now I've opted for painting light. And I just feel it's so much more fun because you can create all of the little subsurface scattering things and all that stuff in there. Now you see what I'm doing is I'm adding color into, right here, see this magic layer right here? This is our lines layer, And I've talked to you guys about this before with my style. You can go back to last week's episode where I was talking about doing this with Zap, where I actually go through and I'll paint the lines and the values to be a little bit, especially like in the skin, like reds or like purples. Basically, whatever color is around that area, I'll take the darker version of that and color it. Color the lines and color the values around it. And this saves a lot of time. This saves so much time. And I honestly feel like I'm cheating every time I do it because it looks amazing. And it shouldn't be that easy to make awesome looking paintings. So I think you guys should definitely check out. You should try this for yourself. Try out this technique. See if it works for you. check out last week's episode where I worked on Zap if you want a little bit more in-depth detail as to how I go about painting the lines and stuff like that. I think I have a lot of other tutorials where I do this, but this is basically like, if you've been watching my show for quite a while now, you know that this is my thing now. So that's basically how I get the lines to look a lot more natural instead of muddy, right? Because if you leave them all black, especially on the skin, it just looks kind of like dead and nasty, and it doesn't look natural. But as soon as you introduce those warm colors in there, your paintings already start to look a lot more natural and awesome. So do that. All right. So now we're going to start moving into, I think we're going to start moving into overpainting pretty soon here. Yeah. Just getting my colors in here. And one of the things, again, I want you guys to pay attention to how bright the lights on his skin are, and then how hard of a transition it goes into the shadows. This is how you create, like I said, those bright scenes, by showing the contrast, really like blowing out your lights and then making your dark shadows super, super dark. And I think I actually go through with a multiply brush and make them even darker. And another thing that I really like to do in these types of lighting schemes is I like to always consider your reflected light, because you can see how it fades into shadow, and then at the back part of his shoulder and his neck here, you can see a little bit of that skylight kind of lighting the back of his neck right there. That sort of thing, I really believe, or this is just the way it goes. Like, if you want your paintings to look a lot more awesome, all you have to do is consider where all of your ambient light and where all of your reflected light is coming from. And once you start painting that into your characters, your paintings will take on they basically jump up to a new level, and they look so much cooler and believable and super, super fun. So yeah, give it a shot. Give it a shot. I dare you. So moving on, just considering, again, the contrast. Look at the contrast between the light and the shadow. Big, big contrast right here with the little drink umbrella. And you're going to see me go through, and I'm basically just going to continue doing this with all the characters in the background. And you'll notice as the characters go into the background, you'll notice that their shadows start to become a lot more blue. And this is another trick that I like to do to help create space. Creating space between your front character and your back characters or props. You always want to consider how the haze of the atmosphere will sit between your eyes and the object, right? So naturally, the shadows in the background will become blue because our atmosphere, the sky, is blue. Much more like if you were doing a sunset, then your atmosphere and your shadows would turn orange as they go into the background. This is another thing that we've talked about a lot, and I am flapping my gums a lot more than I usually do. But that's probably because I'm not used to shoutcasting over top of time lapses, but that is just fine. So we're finally getting into that point where I'm like, oh, thank you. Like, we've crossed that point. We've crossed the point where I don't know what I'm doing. Now I'm starting to look at my painting and I'm like, hey, did I do that? That's pretty good. I like this. I like this. I must be a good artist. I must be really good, right? And I'm like getting all pumped up and like super excited because now this painting is starting to take the turn for the better. It's going, see, now we're going past that step of I don't know what the heck I'm doing, and I pushed past it, right? Pushed past it because I know that in the end, there's all kinds of things that I can do to fix up the values, fix up the painting, clean things up, make it look better. So I had that confidence within me from the beginning because I know that it's just part of my process is just going into that point where I don't know what I'm doing and then emerging on the other side saying, oh, had it handled the whole time. I always know what I'm doing, right? But yeah, just I hope that you guys understand that it happens to even, artists that are professional. Professional artists still get to that point where they don't know what the heck they're doing. And they just they take a break and then they come back to it. And they do what they know is right within them. Okay, so another thing that I want you guys to notice is look at the shadows that are being casted on this grass here. Notice the differences between the very, very light grass and then the shadow. See the big contrast? Again, if you're able to do this, see the skin of the Blood Elf girl? If you're able to do this in all the places possible in your painting, and there's all kinds of like little subtleties that you have to be aware of, but I really think that that's not something that I can explain with words. It's just something that you have to get used to yourself, and referencing photos and all those things with like those exposure tricks happening will really, really help you out. So, but in general, the main thing you want to keep in your mind is this contrast between the light and the shadows. And if you push that, then it's going to make your drawings look super bright and make your scenes look super awesome. Okay, so now we are going to be moving into one of my favorite parts of the picture, one of the favorite parts of any painting, is finally, once I get all of my lines painted, all my values painted, and all my colors in there, now I start to go into the OP stage, which is where we make this lovely layer right down here called the OP layer, and we start doing our overpainting. And this is basically where I say, okay, everything I say from this point goes. Any color that I want to put on top of this painting, that's basically what color is going to be there. There's no more layers in front. I'm just painting over top of everything. And usually I like to separate it in terms of, like the character in the foreground and characters in the background. So that way, it's not just one layer. But anyway, point is that I'm overpainting, okay? And this is really, really fun. Because this is the point where you start to really start chiseling in the edge of that shoulder muscle and having the shine, the speculars of the skin show through, and just really, really sculpting and sharpening the edges. And this is I absolutely love this part. It's super, super fun. And the coolest part about this is that I'm working with my chalk brush, and I'm just pressing Alt, right? When you have your brush selected and you're in Photoshop, you press Alt, pulls up your eyedropper tool. And all the colors that I really need to work with are already on the canvas. So I'm just Alt-clicking to pick up a color, and then I'm just kind of painting and blending lines. I'm blending things in and creating sharp corners, see on the edge of this knuckle and on the edge of this one too. I like to mix in soft transitions and then hard transitions in different parts of my characters. So, and the overpainting layer allows you to do that because, like I said, it gives you the power. So use it. And you can see my layer setup right over here. No secrets. No secrets there. You know how I set up my layers. And yeah, so now we're going to start moving into the background characters. And we got about 1 minute left. And then I'm going to talk a little bit about the colors that I'm using if I haven't died from exhaustion from talking so much. Talk about some of the colors that I've used. And some of the things that really drive the point home as far as reflected light. Okay, I'm going to pause it right here. Reflected light. See all that right onto the underside of that beach ball? You ever notice when you're in the pool, all of that light that's being casted down into the water and then being reflected back up onto your body? It turns the underside. Next time you're in the pool, check this out. It turns the underside of your skin. It makes it all green, and it looks really, really cool. So that's what I'm doing with this beach ball. You'll notice that there's this underlighting happening on all of these characters. And as I go in and overpaint it, I'm considering that there's a harsh upper light coming from the sun, right? But then underneath, it's going to turn all the shadows of the characters very blue and green and all kinds of cool stuff. So, yeah, I really like doing pool scenes because there's something about the reflected light. I think it's really the reflected light that comes out of the pool that makes characters look really, really cool. So, yes. I should just be a pool party artist. I should just draw this is World of Warcraft. I could do some League of Legends stuff. I'll do some, Adventure Time or whatever. But let's go ahead and get into the painting. And let's talk about... Was that it? I guess that was it. Okay, so let's talk about the last couple things here. I did do a little bit more overpainting before I ended the time lapse. But it was really just to kind of paint the clouds and stuff. But let's go ahead and talk about exposure. Okay. So this is basically the orc. I want you to pay close attention to the orc. This is him before we did any of that overpainting, any of the little exposure tricks. And I want you to pay attention to the colors right here, right? Let's take a look at these colors right there. And then the difference between there and there. Whoa, that was a big jump. So we went to red, and then the light is yellow and super bright. So that's key one. But even further, I decide to push the exposure even further right here. See? So I actually make his skin a little bit lighter, and I think I keep the shadow. The shadows are about the same size. So yeah. I actually added in a little bit more contrast in the hair and stuff back here. You can see that. A little bit more contrast in the shadows behind the shades and all that good stuff. Okay, so another really cool place to check out the contrast is in the grass, okay? So look at the color of the lightness on the grass. The part where the light is hitting the grass is this color, okay? We got all these nice greens. We even get down to here. But see, watch what happens when we go to the shadow. Super, super dark blue. See how we hue shifted? We hue shifted even to like this bluish, all right? And there's a huge jump from here to here. Huge, huge jump. And ladies and gentlemen, that is how you create bright scenes. Last thing I want to talk about is just a little bit of the stuff that I did on the clouds. Where are the clouds? This probably warrant a whole nother tutorial in itself, because I actually do want to teach you guys how to paint clouds. I don't know if I have done a tutorial on painting clouds. Probably because I haven't been that confident in it, but I have been gaining confidence. So one of the things that I've noticed about clouds that makes them look really nice is actually adding in these grays. Because you'll see you got the bright white here, then you go blue, but then you have almost like this, again, reflected light that goes almost towards more gray. And if you add that into your clouds, it makes them look really realistic. Like it sort of like tricks the viewer's eye into saying, oh, whoa, I've seen that formation before. I've seen clouds that look just like that. And then, you know, it's just awesome. That's what art is all about. You got to trick your viewer into thinking it's real, or just giving them a feeling, And I hope that what I have taught you guys today has given you some good insight into that. Alrighty then. So to wrap things up, I just want to say, for those of you who are considering coming to the pool party, once again, it is going to be held this Sunday. And you can make an account for free. You can make a free account, so I don't want to hear any excuses. All you got to do is make a free account, join us on Earthen Ring, just make an orc, meet us at the orc starting area, and then I will run you to the pool. And it's going to be at 9 p.m. server time, so check and see how that works out for your time, how that correlates to the server time. And yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing you guys there. Oh yeah, and for those of you who are on the fence still, I do have a little preview of our last party. Okay, so check this out. You guys take care. Thanks again for joining me for a tutorial. Till next time, see ya.